All right, let's cut through all the noise. We're diving deep into one of the most tangled stories of our time, the Jeffrey Epstein files. We're going to break down what the evidence actually shows.
So this whole thing kicks off with a number that's just massive. Over 3.5 million pages of secret government files on Jeffrey Epstein and his whole network have been released to the public. It's one of the biggest disclosures of its kind ever. But here's the thing. When you have that much data, you also get a ton of speculation and conspiracy theories, right? So the big question we're tackling here is, what do these millions of pages truly tell us once you get past all the headlines?
To even start to understand what's in the files, you've got to know how we got them. This wasn't some random leak. This huge data release happened because of a law, a rare one that both parties actually agreed on, called the Epstein Files Transparency Act of 2025. It basically forced the government to open up the vaults.
And when I say the scale is staggering, I mean it. We are not just talking about boring old documents here. No, this was the whole shebang. Photos, videos seized from Epstein's properties, confidential FBI interview notes, and even grand jury transcripts. It gave us a look inside the investigation like we've never had before.
But this didn't just happen overnight, not even close. The road to getting all this information out in the open was a decade-long legal war, and it wasn't started by the government. It was started by a survivor. The spark that really lit the whole fuse was this lawsuit from 2015. Virginia Gifford sued Ghislaine Maxwell for defamation, and all the evidence that got dug up for that case became this treasure trove that journalists and lawmakers spent years fighting to get released. It was the first real crack in that wall of secrecy.
And believe me, that road was incredibly long. It started way back in 2005 with the first police investigation, went through that notorious secret deal in 2008 that kept him out of serious trouble, then hit that pivotal lawsuit in 2015, and finally led to this massive data dump in 2026. Every single step was a fight.
And if you want a perfect example of the kind of stonewalling they were up against, just look at this quote. This is from Ghislaine Maxwell's deposition. She kept using phrases just like this, consensual adult interaction, to dodge questions about the abuse. It was a legal smokescreen that took years to see through.
So after all that fighting, what did we actually learn? Well, first off, it helped blow up one of the biggest myths about these files, this idea that there's a single, simple client list. The reality, it's way more complicated and honestly, way more revealing about how power and influence really work.
Okay, this part is so important to get right. Let's be really clear. The Department of Justice has said, flat out, there is no formal client list. What does exist are Epstein's crazy extensive contact books. Think of them less as a client list and more like a phone book of the global elite. So being in the book proves you knew him, but it doesn't automatically mean you're guilty of a crime. And one of the most bizarre and revealing pieces of evidence mapping this whole network is something called the 50th Birthday Book. It's a 238-page photo album that Ghislaine Maxwell put together for him. It's basically a curated scrapbook of all his powerful friends made long before his first conviction. And when you peek inside this thing, you can see the different pillars of his power. You've got notes from political figures like Bill Clinton, and even a drawing supposedly from Donald Trump, which gave him this shield of influence. You've got entries from business titans, which show you the financial engine behind it all. And then, most disturbingly, you have this creepy art. Drawings of young girls and naked women, which kind of hints that his inner circle knew exactly what his lifestyle was all about.
But, these files, they don't just point to a network of powerful people. They reveal a network of institutional failures. The story of how this went on for so long is really a story of systems that were either broken or, even worse, were actively helping to protect him.
10 years. What do you think that number stands for? It's the absolutely shocking delay between when the FBI first got a tip about Epstein and Maxwell from a survivor named Maria Farmer back in 1996 and when they finally opened an actual investigation in 2006. A full decade went by.
And look, this wasn't just one mistake. The files show a clear, undeniable pattern of failure. You had the FBI's 10-year delay. Then you had the Department of Justice and its secret non-prosecution agreement in 2008, this deal of a lifetime that kept him safe from federal charges and completely blindsided the victims. And finally, the Bureau of Prisons, where the released jail videos just raised even more questions about his death in custody.
Releasing 3.5 million pages. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right?
Well, not by a long shot. The fallout has been global, it's been complicated, and for a lot of people, it's been incredibly painful. This story is far from over.
And the fallout went global. I mean, way beyond just the US. In Poland, the government started looking into whether Russian intelligence was using Epstein's network to blackmail European leaders. And over in the UK, a former ambassador was fired because the files exposed his financial connections to Epstein.
But here's something that gets lost in all the headlines. For the survivors, this massive data dump was not some clear-cut victory. In a really powerful statement, 20 survivors said that this whole thing just re-traumatized them by making their private trauma public again, all while many of the powerful men who abused them are still hiding behind redacted names.
And that feeling wasn't just coming from the survivors. Even one of the lawmakers who wrote the law to get these files released basically said the same thing. Representative Ro Khanna accused the Justice Department of spending more time protecting the Epstein class than protecting the survivors. It really highlights this huge conflict between transparency and true justice.
Okay, so let's boil it all down. After wading through everything, what do we actually know for sure? The files confirm deep social ties and travel with powerful people, including 2 former presidents. They prove that investigators knew about at least 10 other suspected co-conspirators who were never charged. And they lay out the complex financial web that paid for this entire operation for decades.
Which leaves us with one final and really crucial question. The files are open, and that's a huge win for transparency, no doubt. But with key names still blacked out and so many potential co-conspirators never facing charges, you have to ask, are the files open, but is the case for justice still closed?